What if I told you that you could play against the London system and get the advantage within the first 5 moves? I know you're sitting there thinking this is not realistic. Well, then you know what? You can call me Jesus because I'm about to work a miracle. A lot of London system players make this mistake very early in the opening, as early as move 4. I know this because I play the London system and I've made this mistake many, many times. So I'm going to show you what that is today so that when you see it, you can punish it immediately. All right, so first and foremost, I'm just going to walk you through the general structure that white is hoping for when they play the London system. So don't worry about black's moves. White is going to play d4 and bishop f4. Then they're going to bring their pawns to e3 and c3. They're going to bring their knights out to f3 and to d2. And finally, they're going to bring their last bishop out to d3. So white is hoping for this nice pawn pyramid where the d4 pawn is well protected, so they have a very solid center. Additionally, they want their knights on d2 and f3, and the bishops on d3 and f4. So the pieces are relatively well developed, the center is very solid, and they're very well protected. Now, the problem is that most London system players, when they learn how to play this system, they learn to bring their bishop out, and then they learn to build this pyramid. But the problem is that in this position, when white plays c3, just building this pawn pyramid, this is already a mistake. c3 is already a mistake, and I'm going to show you how we punish that. All right, so now I'm going to flip the board so that we're looking at this from black's perspective because, you know what, we're the hero in this situation. So let's have black on the bottom. So in response to c3, we are going to play knight c6, which is just a simple developing move. Doesn't look like we're doing anything special, but you'll quickly find that white has no good response here. So white's most common responses are knight f3, knight d2, and sometimes even bishop d3. And I'm going to walk you through each one so I can show you how to punish each one. So let's start with the most common, which is knight f3. In response, we're going to play queen b6. So we're bringing our queen out, we're adding pressure to d4, but more importantly, we're attacking this b2 pawn. And white can't allow us to take this b2 pawn because then this rook on a1 is going to be hanging. So white has to defend it somehow. White can play queen b3, which seems like a reasonable move because we have sort of this Mexican standoff and white sits here and thinks, you know, what did you do? We're just having our queens stare at each other. But in response to this, we're going to play c4. We're going to attack the queen, and you'll see that white has no good answers. White can take this queen. They can trade queens. We'll take back with the a-pawn, but now you've just allowed us to take control of this open a-file with our rook, so we've improved this piece. Additionally, we have a lot of space on the queen side, and we can play b5 and b4 later to expand. So trading queens for white is not a great option. You might think that white can just play queen c2, just drop back, and there's no problem. But there's actually a really nice tactic here, so pause the video if you don't see it yet. But it's a pretty common idea in the London to bring this bishop out to f5, even sacrificing it. So white can take this bishop. You might think, well, what's the problem? But now we take on b2, and again, this rook on a1 is hanging, so black is totally winning in this position. So white can't play queen c2, and the only other option is to drop the queen all the way back to d1. But if you drop the queen back to d1, why did you bring it out to b3 in the first place? So all of this goes to show that playing queen b3 as the response is not a viable option. But white still needs to defend this pawn, so, you know, another good option might be to play queen c2 now. But again, we're going to try to bring our bishop out to f5 so we can win a tempo. So here we're going to play g6, which prepares bishop f5. So now this bishop is defended, and we will attack the queen with tempo. Unfortunately, we can't play bishop f5 immediately because white has this annoying move, d takes c5, which attacks our queen, and this is just a very frustrating intermezzo that we want to avoid. So white can't play queen c2 because we're going to play g6, and we're going to bring the bishop out to f5, attack with tempo. So the only other option is to play queen c1, but of course this isn't a developing move, and additionally it allows us to play bishop f5, of course, where we control this long diagonal. And if you just stop and look at this position, you'll see that black is simply better developed. So black has the edge here again. The final option is just to play b3. And this is essentially white admitting that he's made a mistake because all they're doing is playing a pawn move. And if you stop again and look at this position, black is simply better developed. Nobody wants to just play a pawn move right in the opening. This isn't a developing move. So again, black here has the edge. So all of this goes to show that unfortunately knight f3 is not the right idea because we're going to meet it with queen b6, and we've already gotten the edge. So white's second most common move in this position is knight d2, and that's what we're going to take a look at right now. So in response, we're going to play bishop f5, obviously. We love putting our bishop on f5 when we can control this diagonal. White is a little frustrated because they won't be able to bring their bishop out to d3 to contest it. So if you just stop and look at this position, black is better developed here. Black has 3 pieces out, white only has 2, so white has no edge here. The 2 most common responses here are knight g to f3 and queen b3. So we'll start by looking at queen b3. Response here, we're just going to play queen d7. We're going to defend this b7 pawn that white is attacking. And on the next move, we're going to play c4 and kick the white queen away. So that might look something like knight g to f3. Then we're going to play c4. We're attacking the queen. The queen's going to run away. And we'll play e6. Black is totally solid here. We have good control of the center. We have control on the queen side. And most importantly, we are controlling this e4 square. We've got 1 pawn and 2 pieces controlling this e4 square. So queen b3 is not a great option. So the other move here that white might play is to bring the other knight out to f3. And in this position, black has 2 good responses. The best and most adventurous is queen b6. We're developing another piece, adding pressure to the center. We're also attacking the b2 pawn. But if you want to, you also can simply play e6. This is the more solid option. The one variation to be aware of here is that white might play queen b3, attacking our b7 pawn. And unfortunately, we cannot play queen b6 and have the Mexican standoff because white will trade queens, and then they'll play bishop b5, pinning this knight on c6. This knight will eventually come to e5, and there's just going to be a lot of pressure here, and this pin is going to be very frustrating, so it's something that we want to avoid. So instead of playing queen b6, just play the simple queen c8, defend this pawn. And I know what you're thinking, didn't we just criticize white for playing a very similar move earlier? Yes, we did, but the difference here is that as black, we can play c4 later on. We're going to be able to hit this queen, and black is doing very well. White really just has no edge here. So the final move that we're going to look at today is bishop d3. This is by far the least common of the 3 moves we've looked at, but I'm showing you it anyway just so that you're fully prepped. In response, we're going to play queen b6. We're bringing our queen out, again, pressuring the center, but more importantly, attacking this b2 pawn. And the only response that we really need to worry about is queen b3, where we again have this Mexican standoff. Here, we're going to play c4. We're forking the pieces, and as we've seen in previous variations, we know that white doesn't want to trade queens, but unfortunately, white has to, because if they don't, we're going to take the bishop. So white will trade queens, and then they'll probably play bishop c2, but luckily, black has just taken the advantage because white just had to move this bishop a second time. So white's just lost the tempo. Black is going to play b5 and b4. We're going to expand on the queen side, and we're just very solid here. Now, in case you're sitting there wondering, well, we know that c3 is a mistake, but does anyone actually play it? The answer is yes, undoubtedly. A lot of people play it. I've played it myself many times, and I even pulled up the master games here on chess.com to show you. You can see that c3 is the second most common move. You can also take a look at the win percentages and see how well black does. So after c3, we play knight c6. We know what to do from there. But the most common move is knight f3. In response to that, we'll play knight c6. And again, you'll see the most common move is c3. So after c3, if you were watching attentively, you'll remember we play queen b6. You can see how well queen b6 does in this position. But undoubtedly, this mistake is very common. I've made it multiple times. Even masters are making it all the time. So now when you see it, please punish it. If this video was useful for you, give it a thumbs up so that more people can see it, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more instructive content just like this.